Have you ever been scared of something? Scared just enough that it kept you from doing something that you wanted to do? Look, I know it may not be the manliest thing to admit, but I've had more than one fear over the years. One of my first fears, believe it or not, was developed after a simple game of baseball. I grew up in a small town in Tennessee. We didn't have much. We were a simple family. My parents had minimum wage jobs. Most of my family and extended family all lived on the same street, on the land that belonged to my great-great-grandparents. It was all farmland. And because our house was up on the hill behind my grandparents' house, I got off the school bus each day at their house. And almost every single day after school, my cousins and I, we would gather together for a game of baseball. The only thing I remember about our game on this particular day was the baseball that I hit. You see, my cousin was pitching, I was hitting, and I hit the ball hard. So hard that it left my grandparents' property. It actually went through the window of an old vacant house that my great-great-grandparents once lived in. It obviously was vacant, and it was a creepy house. The kind of house where all the doors are stuck shut, it's really dark inside, everything's filled with boxes. We only had one baseball, and I'm the one that hit it, so I was the chosen one. I was involuntarily picked to go inside. Obviously, we couldn't get through the door, so I turned around and my cousins were in this hoisting position. And they hoisted me up on the edge of the windowsill, and I looked inside and I could see the ball barely on the ground. After I spotted the ball, the creepiness of the old vacant house aside, my main concern was, what if the floor caves in when I jump down? I just tried not to think about it when I jumped. The good news? Well, the floor stayed put. The bad news? I'd failed to realize that the projection of the ball had pushed the glass from the window forward, the clear glass, the kind that's hard to see in the dark. And when I jumped down to the floor, well, let's just say this, the part of the story I haven't told you yet is that in small towns in East Tennessee, kids play outside all the time with no shoes on. Yeah, major fail. I remember slicing my foot open in multiple places. Ever since that moment, I've always been a little bit freaked out by broken glass. And not long after that experience, glass haunted me. Little simple things like my sister dropping a glass in the kitchen. Just that little accident, glass would shatter, I would immediately leave the room. Isn't it crazy how one small misstep can develop fear that in turn has a huge impact on the steps that we are willing to take? Can you relate to that at all? Maybe for you, you made a mistake at home. You got yelled at by your mom and dad. In turn, you just kind of shut down a little out of fear that you just might get yelled at again. Or maybe you did something at school and it all turned out to be a huge embarrassment. Since that moment, as a result, you just struggle to be yourself or to take any chances because you're scared of what other people might think about you. What if I told you that much like the secret to a magic trick, where a seemingly impossible task looks totally effortless, there was a secret to you conquering your fears that can unleash you to actually do the impossible. Now, I learned this secret from personal experience, by facing my fears. Something I'm going to continue to do tonight. In these buckets are about 100 pounds of broken shards of glass. And tonight, I'm going to walk on it, barefoot. To do this, I need a couple of volunteers. I need a couple of volunteers from the audience. Someone who seems to be mature and can follow instructions carefully so that no one gets hurt. That you please raise your hand. Let's go. Right there is one of the gentlemen. And let's go with... Right there? Yeah, come on up. Give them both a big round of applause for volunteering. Hey, how are you? Thanks so much for coming up. If you wouldn't mind, have a seat for me right there. What's your name, sir? Jake. Jake, if you wouldn't mind, have a seat for me right over there. Okay. I'm going to face my fears. These two volunteers are going to play the role of you guys, basically representation from you, the audience, to ensure that what you're experiencing out there is literally the exact same thing you would be experiencing if you were inches away from where they are. Gentlemen, here's what I need you to do. Let's start with you. Tell me your name one more time. Jake, that's what I thought. Jake, come over here. Be very careful because this is real glass. But a lot of people out there, they may not believe that. So I need you to confirm for them that it's real glass. Here's what I'd like you to do. Be very careful to make sure, as you can see, there's some little shards of glass here. Don't put your knees or your jeans down. Just walk a little bit closer so that you can reach the pile and just kind of squat down a little bit. Very carefully, very slowly, very gently. This is real glass. It will cut you if you're not careful. Find a piece that's sticking up that you feel you can somewhat safely pull out of the pile. Just go ahead and pull it out very carefully. Now, without running your finger across it, because it will cut you if you do that, can you feel that enough in your hands to confirm, at least enough for them to know that that is a real piece of glass? Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's a real piece of glass. All right, you can toss it back in the pile. You feel like you need to check any more out, or do you feel like it's real glass? All right, you can have a seat right back over there. Tell me your name, man.
BJ.
BJ. Now, you have a really cool job. You know what that is?
What's that?
You get to inspect my feet.
Ooh, okay.
No, I'm kidding. You don't actually have to inspect my feet. I'm just going to let you look at the bottom of them. Because again, there's a lot of people out there, and what they're thinking is, he must have some type of protective substance on his feet, maybe some kind of little like invisible sock that we can't see that's protecting the bottom of his feet to keep the glass from cutting him. So BJ, I'm just going to let you just take a good look. Is that actually my foot right there?
That's your foot.
Real skin, right? Real skin. All right, I'm not going to make you touch it. Definitely not going to make you smell it, all right? Socks and shoes. Once again, BJ, that's my real foot, correct?
Real foot.
All right. You guys will be here inches away. What you're about to experience is not an illusion. It is a genuine stunt. If you wouldn't mind, just for these next few moments, please stay as quiet as possible so that I can concentrate, slow down my heart rate, and face my fears. Thank you so much. Will you please keep that applause going for our two volunteers from the audience? Man, thanks so much for coming up. You're an awesome sport. You can go back to your seat. I appreciate your help. Watch your step. And Jake, you too, man. Jake and BJ, thanks so much for coming up. You may go back to your seat. Now, before I start letting you in on secrets, I need to make an important announcement. Do not try this at home. Go to your neighbor's house. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. For real, do not try this at home. You see, without knowing the truth about the right technique involved in what I just did, you can seriously hurt yourself. So come on, be smart. Do not try this at home. If I were to explain every detail about how something like this is possible, some of you might actually be tempted to go out and try this without the supervision of a trained professional. So while I can't explain the truth in full detail, I can tell you the greatest secret of what made this stunt possible for me to accomplish. Are you ready? It's really simple. I had to recognize that when armed with the knowledge and the truth about how to accomplish what I was trying to do, the fear of the glass cutting my feet was just an illusion. That's it. Sounds simple, right? I mean, so simple that it's hard to believe. But here's the deal. This really is real glass, and I really did just walk across it with my real bare feet. Seriously, the biggest secret was realizing that the fear of the glass cutting my feet was just an illusion because I knew the truth about how it worked. And in that one simple realization, an impossible task with the knowledge of the truth became possible. So let's go back to our original question. What are you scared of? Now, I know the first things that come to your mind are probably simple fears, maybe silly even, like my fear of broken glass, like heights. Anyone? No? What about spiders? I see a couple guys' hands up. That's pretty funny. Anyone have a hard time with small spaces? Claustrophobia? I just heard someone over here say clowns. But I mean, come on, guys, let's get real. What are you really scared of? When I was your age, the fear I didn't realize I had, or maybe just wasn't willing to admit that I had, was my fear of not getting approval. I mean, I struggled to make friends. I wasn't good enough for people at my school. That's the way it seemed. And I struggled to gain my dad's approval, or so I thought. So I spent the majority of my life in this constant fear of what other people thought about me. And without realizing it, it paralyzed me. It kept me from living out the life that God created me to live out. I mean, there are people listening to me speak right now whose lives are paralyzed by fear. And again, I'm not talking about spiders or clowns. Many of us, we buy the right stuff, we wear the right clothes, we try to be seen with the right people, all because we're doing everything in our power to gain the approval and popularity of others, ultimately because we're scared of what might happen if we don't. We exhaust ourselves, don't we? Trying to maintain the right physical appearance without realizing spiritually that our Heavenly Father accepts us just as we are, and that our fears are usually just clever illusions. You see, when our time together comes to an end, many of us, we're gonna go back to our normal lives feeling like totally new people, right? We're gonna be all fired up and empowered to go change the world by sharing with others what God has done in our lives and how we've been set free. The problem is that when we go back to our houses and our schools and jobs, far too often those fears of approval, and they start creeping back into our minds and into our hearts, and we begin to settle. We begin to once again settle for the illusions instead of boldly proclaiming and living out the truth that once set us free. Isn't it cool though that the very people who God used to author the Bible, they struggled with this too? I mean, in fact, the Gospels tells us of a story many of you have heard of, about a time when Jesus, who is up finishing a meal with a large group of people, he tells his disciples to go get into a boat, to head out onto the sea ahead of him. This gave him the needed time to dismiss the crowd and, quite frankly, probably just spend a little quiet time in prayer. And sometime later, just before dawn, a storm begins to stir up, and the wind was coming up against the boat, and the disciples were being battered against the waves. And around 4 o'clock in the morning, get this, Jesus came toward them walking on water. Walking on water. Okay, tell me you wouldn't be a little scared by seeing someone walk on the water towards you in the middle of the sea during a vicious storm. I mean, the disciples were No different. They were scared out of their wits, out of their minds. A ghost, they said, crying out in terror. But Jesus, here's what I love about Jesus. He was quick to comfort them, and he told them to take courage and to not be afraid. And upon seeing that it was Jesus, this disciple named Peter, again, another guy a lot of us have heard of, Peter says, hey, if it's really you, call me to come out to you on the water. And Jesus said, okay, come ahead. So get this, Peter jumps out of the boat and begins to actually walk on water, keeping his focus on Jesus. However, this doesn't last long, right? Because as the storm continued, Peter becomes a little bit distracted by all the waves and the wind and the scary stuff going on around him. So much so that he became so distracted and fearful that he took his focus off of Jesus. He lost his trust in Christ and he began to sink. Now, thankfully for us, the story doesn't end there. Once Peter began to sink, he cried out, "Master, save me." And again, this is what I really love about Jesus. He doesn't even hesitate. He reaches down and he grabs his hand, but then he follows it up by saying, "Why did you have such little faith? Why did you doubt me?" And they both climb back into the boat, and the wind, it immediately stops. The disciples in the boat, having watched this whole thing, they bowed down and they worshiped Jesus, saying, "This is it. You are God's son for sure." Have you ever wondered what would have happened if Peter stayed focused on Jesus and didn't become distracted by the storm? I mean, Peter wanted to be with Jesus. He loved Jesus, and seeing him out on the water, he couldn't help it. He just wanted to be out there with him. Many of you recently, this week, you asked Jesus to call you out of the boat. Many of you were freed from your straitjackets in life that were holding you back from experiencing the real freedom and love that comes only from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Sometimes I believe Peter maybe gets just a little too much criticism for doubting Jesus. I mean, think about it. What were the other disciples doing when Peter decided to step out of the boat and actually try to walk across water? Nothing, right? They were too paralyzed by their fear. At least unlike the other disciples, he got out of the boat, right? And the reason why he got out of the boat, even though it was stormy and dark, was because Peter had faith in Jesus. Peter believed that if Jesus was with him, it didn't matter if it was dark and stormy and windy and simply crazy out there, because Jesus could protect him. Because Peter did get out of the boat and trust Jesus, he became the only mortal man to actually walk on water. Now, to all of you who chose to get out of the boat, I want to personally thank you and let you know that there was some serious partying going on in heaven. I mean, when you decided to let Christ's power free you from the bondage of your straitjacket, you chose to get out of the boat. But here's the kicker. There's still a great deal to learn from Peter and this story. And this is very important. Listen closely. Like Peter, when we decide to get out of the boat, we're not finished. We need to trust and keep our attention on Jesus as he calls us to come to him. I admit, it's easy to become overwhelmed by all of the deception in our lives, our storms. There'll be times we will fall into the sea, but know this, like Peter, all you have to do is cry out to Jesus and he will be there to help you. There's no storm too great for the creator of the universe, Jesus Christ, the Son of God himself, to get you through. All you have to do is trust. Soon, you're going to be back in your own communities, your churches, your homes. You're going to be entering into a storm, and sometimes you're going to feel this feeling of like, I can't control this. You just feel completely unable to control it. Maybe it's a sexual relationship that you need to end. Maybe a broken family that you feel helpless to heal. Maybe it's school or friends that might make fun of you because of your relationship with God. Regardless of your storms, and it is so important to know and understand that as we learned this week, there is a God who loves you beyond comprehension or circumstance, a God who does not care about what you look like, what clothes you wear, how well you perform, or how popular you may or may not be. God loves you for you, and He loves you unconditionally. There is nothing that you can do to pull away from God's amazing love. So as Jesus told the disciples in the boat, friends, take courage. Do not be afraid. I am here. Stay focused on Jesus. And like this broken glass that I walked across this evening, remember that the biggest secret was realizing that the fear of the glass cutting my feet was just an illusion. And in that one simple realization, an impossible task became possible because of the knowledge of truth. Guys, nothing is impossible with Jesus. So conquer your fear today. Recognize the deception in your lives, and whatever you do, man, keep walking on the water. Hey guys, it's Harris. Just want to take a moment to say thank you so much for checking out this film series, Shattered. We were so excited to make this series available to you. I hope that you enjoyed it enough that you will leave a comment in the comment section below. More importantly, that you'll take a time to click one of those share buttons and share this video with other people so that they too will be inspired to shatter their illusions. If there's anything we can do to help you, maybe you want to dig deeper into shattering some of the illusions or kind of uncovering some of the deeper deception that might be trapping and entangling you, just send us a text message or an email. All the information is available right here on this page, and we look forward to sharing more videos with you in the future. If you want to keep in touch, make sure you share and subscribe. Hopefully we'll see you soon.